The Travel Transformation Podcast is proud to be partnered with Give the Goodness Global, an amazing global outreach project helping families in need all over Southeast Asia and beyond. Please check them out at Instagram.com/Give the Goodness Global today. And now on to the podcast episode.
Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation, exploring the life-changing potential of solo travel, intentional travel, and location-independent working. Whether you're an aspiring digital nomad or simply wish to boost your confidence through epic travel experiences, I'm here to motivate and inspire you to go after all your wildest dreams. I'm Jessica Grace Coleman, author, certified travel coach, founder of the Travel Transformation Company, and your host for the Travel Transformation Podcast. Travel changed my life. Now let's change yours. You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation. My name is Jessica Grace Coleman and I'm your host. And today I'm talking to self-discovery travel coach, author and owner of GlobeStory, Dawn Pick Benson. Dawn is a self-discovery travel coach who helps women experience personal and spiritual awakening through solo travel. She specialises in working with women who are 45 plus, who feel stuck, and who are at a crossroads in their life, career or relationship. Through her small group coaching program, Brave Journey, Dawn helps women rediscover themselves, plan their trip, and have a squad of like-minded women cheering them on in the process. Dawn is the founder and owner of GlobeStory and has lived in or travelled to more than 48 countries so far. She's also a global ambassador for the Travel Coach Network, a certified cultural intelligence facilitator, and has appeared in publications such as The Washington Post, TripAdvisor, The New York Times, and Woman's World magazine. In this episode, we discuss solo travelling after a breakup or divorce, the power of groups and community, travelling as an introvert, and how we can rediscover the magic in life with one simple exercise, which I love. I had a lot of fun talking to Dawn, so let's get to the interview. Hi Dawn, thank you for coming on the Travel Transformation Podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. Thanks for the opportunity. I can't wait to chat.
No problem. Yeah, it's nice to, as we were saying before, it's nice to actually see you face to face instead of just seeing you online and that kind of thing. So it's really cool. Okay, so let's start with a bit of background info on you. So for our listeners, can you explain a bit about who you are, what you do, and where in the world you are right now?
My name is Dawn Pick Benson. I am a self-discovery travel coach. I focus on working with women who are largely probably 45 to 60 and usually recently kind of in the crossroads of life. A lot of them are divorced and are kind of life as they knew it isn't going to be as they thought. And now what? And just kind of, I love working with women who are at a space in which they're like, I want to rediscover myself. Who was I before that relationship, or before, who was that young, vibrant girl maybe that you remember? And maybe you've kind of lost her along the way. So the women I love to work with are into self-discovery, and I help them figure out a transformational travel experience for them that really brings them what they're looking for in their life. So there's a lot of kind of digging deep, some self-discovery in that, and then working with them to plan a solo trip along the way. And I do focus largely on women who are thinking about going on a solo trip as a way to kind of empower them. I am currently in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I kind of move back and forth. So I live here about part of the time. And then I often live in Kosovo in Southeastern Europe in the Balkans. But currently I am in the US. And I think was there another question you asked me?
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, that's really cool that you have two bases. That's kind of what I'm thinking I would like eventually, just because it's so hard to choose one, basically. I'm always like, I want to go in different places, but I want to have my own place with all my stuff and, somewhere where you can go and relax and in between trips and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so do you have a place in Kosovo, or do you have Airbnbs, or how does that work?
I've been going back and forth to Kosovo for maybe 20 years. So I have friends there. So there are a couple places that I contact first. There's a specific Airbnb that I love. I often stay there. And so I just have their contact information and say, hey, I'm coming. Do you have room for me? Or sometimes I have friends who are going to be out of town or out of the country for a few months, and I sublet their apartment. So it's a little bit different every year, but I always try to find something that's a monthly rental. And the magic of that too is it is really helpful if you know people in the country, because you can contact them directly. And often, with a person on the ground negotiating for you, you can get a really good deal. So that's large what I do, but I do have a couple of favorite spots. And I also have a friend who has a really amazing place in the country at the foot of the mountains in Kosovo. It's absolutely gorgeous. So she lets me stay there sometimes too.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I'm definitely a mountain person. But as someone who's never been there before, can you tell me why you went there in the first place and why you keep going back? Why do you love it so much?
Oh, great question. How I went there in the first place is kind of a long story, but I used to work in higher education and I was teaching a class of international students. And I had a student from Kosovo. I was living here in the US, and this was not long after the war in Kosovo. And so she was just, I don't know, I was kind of taken with her. She was so interesting and would talk about her country. And I was fascinated because I didn't know much about it. And she also had never been out of the country. And so I just kind of, I don't know, maybe looked out for her a little bit as this young girl, the first time alone in college. And so over time, we got to know each other, and she would talk about her family and the country so much. And I thought, this sounds super interesting. And so she would say, you should come visit sometime. My family's been hearing about you. They really want to meet you. And I was like, don't invite me if you don't want me to come, because I
Because I'm
really
there.
will come. Yes. And so I was married at the time, and my ex-husband was a professor too. So he knew her as well. So we basically, at her invitation, came and did some volunteer work and worked in teaching. And I work a lot. I'm a copywriter and I write a lot of copy for websites. And so I help them develop their online presence. And so that was my first foray into it. And I loved the place. I loved the people. And then she got married 4 years later and invited us to come back. And so we thought, when are we going to be invited to a wedding in Kosovo? So we went back, and that second time just kind of solidified us as maybe part of their family. And what I love about Kosovo, like maybe what I love most about Kosovo is that it's a surprise, right? Because I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect it to be beautiful for whatever reason. And it has these lush mountains and lots of places to hike, some really beautiful areas. It has this mix of East and West, which I've discovered I like. Maybe that's why I like Southern Europe a lot. So it has this Turkish influence, but it's also very European, which makes it kind of this really unique flair. And it's very easy to travel there. It's small. Most people speak English. They're incredibly friendly. So if you're lost at all or you don't know what to do, I mean, they'll literally just probably take you to the place. Or, I mean, so many times I've been in a shop and then been invited to coffee by the person in the in the shop, or sometimes to dinner at their home. And so it's a very just hospitality is really important to them, especially hospitality towards strangers. And also as a woman, and I know most people don't think of it as this place to go of safety, but it is. For me, I have never felt like I've traveled I think I've been to almost 50 countries, and Kosovo is one of the safest places I've ever felt alone as a woman. I don't really have to think too much about it. It's just, I don't know, that culturally people they don't harass women like sometimes you might experience in other places. And so I've always felt incredibly safe and taken care of.
Okay, I think the tourist board needs to pay you because it was not on my radar at all before. Now I'm like, this sounds like a really good place to visit. So I'm going to add it to my list. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and because it's not super touristy, that is the magic of it too, because it doesn't have this, you're not going to come there and be inundated with tourism, or it's more I think it's a little easier to have a really cultural experience there, a local experience, because it's not like some of the other countries where there's all these tourist traps and stuff like that. Everything is just so much more authentic because they're not catering necessarily to tourism, if that makes sense. So I love it for all those reasons. It's also a very inexpensive place to travel.
Even better. Okay, it's officially on my list now. You've
Okay,
convinced me.
good, good.
Amazing. Okay.
I love being an ambassador for Kosovo. I love the place.
Nice, nice. Okay, yeah, definitely on my list. Right. So you mentioned your business a bit before. So can you tell me about that? What's it called? You've mentioned briefly what it's for, but what made you want to start it as well?
Yeah, it's called GlobeStory, and it's kind of my own journey. So about 6 years ago, I was married unsure if I was going to continue to be married. And that was a huge, I mean, for anyone who experiences that, because I'd been married almost 2 decades, it kind of blew up my world as I knew it. So that was happening to me questioning it, and then me ending up getting divorced. And then at the same time, I have been a writer for years, various versions, working at magazines, being a copywriter, all these different ways of writing. I was starting to feel like, is this all that I want to do for the rest of my life? And I love travel, and I've always wanted to know, I've always been trying to figure out, how do I integrate more travel into my work? How do I make that part of my life? And luckily, as a writer, I could kind of live anywhere for a chunk of that time. But I just started to have those questions of, my life was completely upended. And then I'm wondering, do I even love what I'm doing? Which actually made me feel even worse, because all of a sudden I'm the only one with the income. And now I'm thinking about, oh, do I want to not have this job? And I was like, what in the world? And so I took my own travel experience. I went to Kosovo for 3 months one summer to just start to figure that out. And so I started to question things and just allow myself to really dig deep into who I am and what I want. And it was, honestly, it's been a really long process for me. That it wasn't a quick thing. I didn't come away after 3 months with 7 epiphanies and know exactly what to do. But what I did come back with was knowing that I needed to make changes and that I needed to allow that for myself. And so I did that. And then I went back. I'm almost finished writing a memoir, a travel memoir about this. I took 3 separate trips to Kosovo to kind of figure all of this out. But then I went back after I got divorced. And that was this healing process for me, of me just being back in a place that felt safe to me, in a place that I had friends. And I just allowed myself to just kind of fall apart and feel like I don't know what to do. I know what I do know is I need change and I want to do something different. And so that's when the idea of travel coaching started to percolate. People started to kind of speak into my life of, you're doing this traveling, Dawn. Like, what if you taught other people? Like, could you teach other people to do stuff like this? Or what if there was some way you could come alongside there's probably a lot of other women experience what you're experiencing. And what if you did something like that? And at first I was like, that's not a job. I can't, like, who's going to pay me to do that? And so I just at first I just dismissed it because I thought, no way. But then I had a friend who had a friend who connected. She said, I know a woman who has your similar story. She's older than you, but she wants to travel and you need to talk to her. So me talking to her and seeing that she was looking for someone to help her find a roadmap to travel. And she'd been married for like 40 years and hadn't traveled on her own that much and really wanted to go somewhere. And so I started to see, oh my gosh, there are people out there. And then that's sort of where I found out about the Travel Coach Network. There was one morning where I had been doing this meditation and this phrase came to mind, and I popped it in Google. And I don't even remember what the phrase was, but I just remember laughing because it was kind of long. And I thought, I wonder what's going to happen with this. And then I popped it in there. And then all the results were like, travel coach, travel coach. And I remember going, can I swear on you? I remember going, holy shit, that's a job. So then I just started reading all those websites and seeing, are these people actually making a living out of this? Or are they like, how is this working? And then as I did that, I started to see a hole too, in that I had a different story than a lot of them. And that I really could maybe work with women like this woman who I just talked to, whose name is Robin, to work with women like her who are kind of in this crossroads of like, I don't know what to do next, but I got to do something different. And I need to find myself again. And maybe travel is a way to do that. And so, I called her up and asked her if I did a program, would she be interested? And she said yes. And so my company kind of started off by that, really. I don't know, it's kind of random to say that. So basically what I kind of did was reverse engineer my transformational process. So I looked at what are all the elements of my series of trips, like to Kosovo, and the different times I've traveled, because I've traveled, it seems like at crossroads in my life consistently. I've been to other places at times of being finished with graduate school and what do I do next? And so there's lots of crossroads in which I have gone on a journey. So I know how transformational it can be. So I was thinking about that and I thought, okay, so one thing I know is that part of the reason my trips were transformational is that I had a community to check in with along the way to help me not just feel like I'm out there alone flailing. So I had this, like when I went to Kosovo, I had a friend who I called every week and we kind of just checked in. She knew what was going on with me and we made sure, that I was supported in the way that I needed to be, especially in a time when you're grieving and stuff like that, because it's really difficult. So basically, I knew that I wanted a group program because I think there's real power in women supporting other women, and that transformation really does happen in community. And if you feel supported along the way. So instead of me focusing, I do one-on-one coaching, but I really like to focus on this group program that I developed, and it's called Brave Journey. It's a small group program because I want to have a lot of time to interact with the women and get to know them, but I want them to get to know each other too. So, as I was developing this program, I joined some different other group programs just to see how they worked. And what I learned I didn't like was a sea of faces on Zoom where you're a part of a group and you don't know half of them and you don't know each other's stories and the coach doesn't even really know you that well. So they're not really giving you great insight. And so I was like, I want to know these women so that I can help coach them to find the right trip for themselves. And I want them to really get to know one another and support one another. So to me, that meant a smaller group, but definitely a group. And then, so Brave Journey is kind of a 6-month process and it goes in phases. So phase 1 is setting your vision. So a lot of self-discovery, learning, like asking questions about who am I? What do I really want? How do I want to feel on this trip? That's a huge thing. I think if you really think about, most people who want to travel want to feel something. And if you discover what that is, I want to feel peaceful or I want to feel vibrant or whatever that is, those are very different trips. But it also helps you learn to know how to plan that trip then. So if you want it to feel peaceful, then you're probably going to go somewhere that's peaceful. You might want to stay there longer. You don't want to maybe you're not going to go skydiving, right? There's going to be intentional about how you're going to do it. And so that's the second phase of it. Once they figure out what they're looking for and how they want to feel, then I support them in creating that trip. And so all the women are creating their own solo trip kind of next to each other, and they're supporting one another along the way, sharing ideas. Hey, I saw this great idea for Greece that would fit you perfectly. One of the women in my group is an artist. And so we found this really cool group of artists in Greece at one point and connected her with them. So there's, lots of synergies that go on there. And then the third phase is going on the trip, and also coming back is in that too. So they have support from me while they're away. And then when we come back, as you know, as a traveler, like coming back sometimes is not fun.
Oh yeah.
How to reintegrate, you've changed. What do you do next? Like, how do you take the elements that you learned on your trip or the things that really changed you, and can you integrate those into your life in some way? And also just dealing with the fact that you feel different now and maybe no one else understands that and those kind of things. So, I kind of developed it with the goal of transformation in mind. So for me, that's super important. Rather than getting people in and out really quickly, I want them to experience transformation. And that's what the women so far in my group have done, or what they've said. I've been honestly surprised at how much they have transformed. It's amazing to watch, just from coming in, Robin came in super tentative and, just really didn't know much about herself. And then I just met with her this week and she just has the light in her eyes. And she's like, my friends are telling me, they're like, what happened to you? You're so different. And she's like, Dawn, it's this group. And that's the coolest thing to hear, right? So I don't know.
Amazing.
I love working.
I mean, that is the best kind of testimonial you could ever get. You have actually completely transformed her life. That is what you've done. That's amazing. Okay, so loads of thoughts popped up for me while you were talking then. I'll try and remember them all.
I know. I'm I just talked a whole lot.
No, that's great. So yeah, it made me laugh when your friend mentioned travel coaching or something and you were like, oh, that's not a job. I feel like most ventures and projects I start like that. I'm like, well, that's not a job. And then I'm like, but could it be? Or but is it though? And then you mentioned that this term came to you when you were meditating that you Googled. And that is so similar to what happened to me. I wasn't meditating, but I was sort of driving and listening to music and singing along. And I guess that's my kind of version of meditation. I always have ideas come to me when that happens. And travel transformation coach popped into my head while that happened. And as soon as I got back, I Googled it, found the Travel Coach Network, joined the certification program, joined the community. So that's really weird that both happened to us as well.
Wow, isn't that cool how that
Yeah.
happens?
It is so strange when these things, like, I wasn't even thinking about that, like, work or anything. I don't think it just popped into my mind. I'm just like, wow, that's interesting. I should Google that and see what happens. And like a lot happened from that. And you mentioned community as well, and that is so important. Being in a group, being in a supportive community. Like I said, I joined the Travel Coach Network, and I think if you just had the course and then you finished it and that was it, like, I would have got a lot out of it. But the ongoing community, all the people I've met, all the things I've seen people do and achieve that make you think, oh, I can do similar things, or like, my own version of this and be successful too. Like, it's just so motivational, and it's just such a great thing to be in a group. So I totally get what you mean with the group programs. And I really like the idea that it's not just the coach talking to you, it's you interacting with the other people in the group and finding things out for them and getting ideas and stuff like that. So that is really, really cool. I did have lots of questions, but you've answered them all in the bit you just did. So this is what I wanted to ask. I'm interested in your answer to this question because it's all about introverts, and I am an introvert, but I'm also like, I'm not as similar as I was, not as similar as I was, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not as shy and quiet as I used to be, but I still identify as like a shy, quiet introvert. So I've got like the double whammy going on that I have to deal with. But for introverts in general, how should they be approaching solo travel? Because it's all about managing your energy, right?
Since the start of the pandemic, many people have been reconsidering the ways in which they have fun. After a horribly isolating couple of years, we're now craving connection, community, and real deep conversation. We don't want to do the same old stuff every time we meet up with friends. We want something new, something different, something more. Enter the Flip the Script Party Packs. These digital party packs will help you flip the script on your usual parties and flip the script on your lives. Yes, this is self-development, but not as you know it. When you buy a Flip the Script party pack, you'll get taken to a super secret page on our online portal where you'll be guided through your very own Flip the Script party with videos, fun worksheets, and printables to help you throw the best Flip the Script party ever. There's a party pack for everyone and every situation. Mindset makeover, business bestie, life goals and legacy, birthday boost, hen do hootenanny, and team building takeover. All designed to help you have a great time in a fun, collaborative setting. They're also perfect for when you're meeting people on the road and you want to get to know your new travel buddies. Small talk's dead. It's time to get deep with a Flip the Script party. Just head to traveltransformationcoach.com/party to purchase, or get all 6 party packs free when you sign up to the Flip the Script Digital Nomad Academy at traveltransformationcoach.com/academy. And now let's get back to the Travel Transformation Podcast.
Yeah, I do think that, because I think sometimes people think I'm an introvert or I'm shy. And so they imagine traveling solo as being, it might be really difficult, or they're not going to meet anyone along the way or whatever. But I think part of understanding introversion is understanding that as introverts, we get energy often by being alone and being on our own, or that is how we need to replenish ourselves, right? So partly for me, I just have to keep that in mind, and that for me, being an introvert, and I'm like you, I think I'm not as shy as I used to be. And so I can be out and be in groups and lots of chattering, but I also have to keep in mind that I need to keep time for myself. So for me, that often means like slow mornings and having my coffee and doing my meditation, and or maybe going for a walk on my own, and that I don't pack it full of people around me all the time. And then I do also think that introverts have their own way of making community, especially when you're traveling solo. I know people worry about being lonely and et cetera. But I think, for me, I enjoy one-on-one deeper conversations. So I'm having a memory now of being in South Africa, and I decided to go on a wine tour, and I went on my own, and I was a little bit worried because I thought I was going to be all couples, and, am I going to feel out of place? But people are so friendly when you're traveling, right? So there was a couple that just kind of befriended me. We sat down and had wine together. had this really interesting conversation. They were from Australia, and we were at the time there was a lot of political stuff going on in the U.S. as probably is often happening, um, and so we were talking about that, and then it just ended up with them giving me their information and saying, "Please come to Australia, and you can stay with us," And I think that so rather than me trying to be bold all over the place, you just if you just start talking to one person and end up having a longer, deeper, more meaningful conversation, I think that is the kind of stuff that energizes me. And I just look for that. I just know that there are different times where I might not feel my days as heavy as some people, or if I were more extroverted, I might crave being around more people, but I just choose venues and things where I think I might be able to have a good conversation with someone or meet someone. And hopefully I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think it is about just understanding where your energy comes from. Because I think that is where people get confused about introvert, extrovert too, is they often think it's the gregarious person versus the super shy person. And it really is more about where your energy comes from. Do you get energy from being in groups, or do you get energy from having your alone time to replenish yourself? And so that's what I just know, is that when I can be in a group and I can be fine there, but I also know that I'd need to probably then the next day have a little bit more downtime, because that will have taken a lot of my energy. So if I pack days of group things, it's just exhausting to me. And then that's not relaxing at all.
Yeah, I'm totally the same. And I definitely get my energy from being alone, like you say, just sort of recharge after being with the group and stuff. But hearing you talk then, I realized like yeah, I do actually get energy from having like deep one-on-one conversations with people, or like a few people who are also introverts and who are also on my wavelength and want to talk about deep stuff and things like that. So I doesn't just have to be alone. It just has to be not in a big group with just small talk and like loudness going on, just really like sitting down with
Yeah.
one person and really connecting. So yeah, that's really cool because I stay in co-livings a lot, and there are lots of extroverts and there are lots of introverts, and I like hanging out with everyone. But it's funny because all the introverts kind of tend to like seek each other out and just sort of like end up in their own little group. And we even had introvert club at the last one I was at. So there were like 3 or 4 of us, and when everything was just like everyone was like dancing and screeching and being really loud, we'd go off into the corner and talk or play cards or something, which sounds really lame, but sometimes you just need to do that. And we just sort of look at each other and be like, introvert club over here. And we're like, yes. So it's like finding your people as well. Like, I don't think you have to worry about being lonely. There's always going to be introverts and extroverts and ambiverts and all kinds of people. And you'll always find someone that you can connect with, I think. So
That's so true. And I do think finding, like, sometimes if you find a restaurant or a place that has a bar area that's not the super busy, crazy ones, but the ones that seem a little more chill. Often I find too, if you just go to one of those and sit down, or sometimes I'll purposely sit down next to someone. And that's a good way to have a one-on-one conversation sometimes too, because there's just one person next to you. And sometimes it doesn't work or you don't feel it. But other times it's just you can end up having this really interesting, deeper conversation that wouldn't happen in a massive group of people. But yeah, I'm super interested in co-working too. Like, I'll have to ask you about that sometime.
yeah, I really love it. Like, I know people who go from like one to the next and they do that all year, and I could not do that because I would be too drained because it's, a lot of people. But I like going to one for like a few weeks and then going and doing something by myself and then like, that kind of thing. So it is all about managing energy, but it's definitely, yeah, incredible, unique experience.
Are both of our interests in having a home base and then traveling? I wonder if that I'm just curious. I wonder if that relates to introversion as well. Like, if because we want to be back home and and recharge and then go back out again. I never thought about it that way, but that might be.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because like all my stuff's in storage at the moment. And like I'm learning to like not to be able to live and deal with not having much stuff, like all the minimalist thing I really like. But I also really liked when I did have a house by myself and had all my stuff, and you could just go there and it's like a recharging station, isn't it, for introverts? You go home and you're with all your stuff and you're comfortable and cozy and you can relax, and then you can like generate I don't know, the courage is the wrong word, but maybe courage, like if you're not naturally someone who goes and stays in co-livings, that I'm not, like it takes quite a lot for me to actually go there, but once I'm there I love it. So I think it is, yeah, just sort of like recharging yourself ready for the next adventure. And like I think that's why I need a base. And also I do like the whole global community of digital nomads and things like that, but I also like having like a local community. So that's part of it as well. Just like you and like, said you've got loads of friends in Kosovo and things like that, and it's just familiar and nice, and you can go there and recharge. And yeah, I definitely could not be one of these people who's just constantly on the road 12 months a year. I have plenty of friends who do it, and they're mostly extroverts, and they don't need to recharge all the time. So that makes sense. They can just go from one place to the
Yeah,
next.
it does not sound fun to me. I've done a little bit of that and it exhausts me. So
Yeah, exactly. You've got to also plan all your trips and stuff while you're working, while you're traveling, while you're meeting new people. And like, it's just all very draining energy wise for introverts, I think. Definitely. Okay. So I know you talk about rediscovering the magic in life through travel, which I love. I think traveling can be so magical. I talk about magical movie moments a lot in my content, especially for people who've been feeling stuck or lost, who find themselves trapped in a mundane routine. So how can we rediscover the magic in life, either when traveling or when we're at home?
this might sound super simple. It is simple, but it's really hard to do. Is I think staying present in wherever you are and whatever. So I think that works at home and travel. It's harder for me, interestingly, at home. But I'll tell you a quick story. I was in Macedonia about a year ago, and I was in this little town called Ohrid it's magical. It's so beautiful, but I'm working on a book. And so I had gone there with the intention of, Dawn, I rented a place that overlooked the water. So it would be beautiful. And I'm just going to write on the patio for 2 weeks. But I kept feeling like, Dawn, you need to enjoy, like be in life and delight in it. And that does not mean just sitting on a patio writing a book. And so I kept feeling like that. I kept kind of hearing, not to sound too woo woo, but I kind of kept hearing it like, you need to delight, like it's okay to delight in life, like chill out a little bit. And so I was grudgingly at first, I was like, fine, fine. And so I would go for a walk and I practiced going for a walk. It's so strange. So I have to practice this, but maybe that tells you something. I went and I just intentionally paid attention to my five senses. What am I seeing? What am I feeling? Like, what am I hearing? What am I smelling? And just like, and doing that helped me to really be in the moment. And I just, all of a sudden, when I was doing that, I just noticed how magical it was. I thought, oh my gosh, these flowers are blooming. I'm smelling coffee, and there's this couple sitting out on their doorstep having espresso together, and they're chatting, and in a language I don't understand. I hear a little bit of the waves coming. I'm smelling bread and peppers cooking. And as I was doing that, I just thought, life is amazing. Like the world is amazing. And in that moment, I mean, those are magical moments, right? Where you just think, wow, I get so worried about, am I going to get this book done? Am I going to do this? Like, am I going to get enough work done today? And then, but what if I just take some time to be in the present and really realize how beautiful the world is and how we get to enjoy it? And yeah, I'll get some work done, but I can also do this. So
No, I love that, because you said it is very simple, but how often do we actually do it? Like, how often do we like stop and like go through all of our senses and really just take everything in? Hardly ever. And just the fact that it is that simple is really cool. And also, we should be doing it a lot more.
as I did that too, I ended up walking down by the water, and there was this woman. I love this picture. The weather had gotten kind of nasty because I had put my swimsuit on because I thought I'd go walk, eventually go down to the water and go swimming. And then the water, it started getting cooler and windier. And I thought, maybe not. But I got toward the water, and there was this woman out in the water in a floating pink flamingo. And she was just out there floating and just laughing. And I just looked at her and I thought, oh my gosh, she has discovered the magic. Like that, she's just out there. She doesn't care. And so I looked at her and I thought, well, if she's in the water, maybe I go. And as I started to put my bag down to take my shirt off to jump in. And there were two other women. I can't remember where they were from, but there were two other women, and they were thinking the same thing as me. They were both looking at her too. And we all looked at each other and we said, why not? Let's join her. So we all jumped in. I don't know. I guess that's an example of rediscovering those moments of magic, show you that it's possible to have those. For me, when I was going through my process of grief, just to have flashing moments like that that are really beautiful reminds you that it's possible and that it's there. You're not going to be sad forever. Yes, it's an ebb and a flow, but to have some of those beautiful moments and discover it's still possible, especially if you're in a bad space, it's really amazing because then it gives you bandwidth to experience it. And then maybe you can experience it again and a little bit more and a little longer.
Yeah, definitely. I love that image of the woman with the pink flamingo. Like that's my spirit animal. That's who I who I strive to be, that kind of person. That's really cool. And did you say that was Ohrid in Macedonia?
Yeah.
That's really interesting because I had Sahara Rose Devore, who's the Travel Coach Network founder, on my podcast, and she said Lake Ohrid in Macedonia was one of her favorite places in Europe. So like that just made me smile. The connection there as well.
It is mine too.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so we've already mentioned Kosovo a lot, but when I asked you about your favorite places, you said Kosovo, India, and Chile. So could you tell me why you love India and Chile so much?
Yeah, very different reasons. I forgot that that's what I told you.
You can change it if you want.
No, those are good ones. So I can see why I picked those. It's hard to pick three. India, because it is the very first international trip I ever went, which it's funny. I grew up in a really small town. My parents didn't travel. I never saw the ocean until I was in college. I grew up in the middle of the US, so not close to the ocean. We didn't go anywhere really. And I always wanted to travel. And so once I turned 18 and no one could tell me what to do, I decided I was going to go on an international trip, and India was the farthest away place I could think of, and I chose India. So that is one of my favorite places, partly because it's the place that introduced me to the world, I think. It was my first time overseas, and I was taken with the whole traveling thing, and the culture was fascinating to me. It was so different than anything I'd ever known. It was like an onslaught of the senses, but I loved it. And people were so amazing. I just find people so fascinating. But there is one of the translators I had on that trip, I'm still in contact with on Facebook. And this is like 30 something years later. And every year it's my birthday, he sends me a Facebook message and says, "Happy birthday." And so it's kind of fun just to think, but it is one of my favorite places. It was just, I don't know, just because it was so different, and partly probably because it was my first trip. And then I went back years later and took a group of students there and also loved it. Although that was a much harder trip. I don't know that I recommend taking a bunch of students in. It's a lot of work. And then Chile, after college, I was in graduate school actually. Interestingly, I arranged with my school to let me take a couple of classes. This is how old I am, before online stuff was a thing. And so I take them correspondence. So I had this huge book and all this homework I had to do, but they let me take it while I said I'm going to go backpacking in Europe. And I was studying at the time international public policy. And so I created this idea of I'm going to study, I don't even remember, something about Peru. And they agreed to let me do it. And then so I went with a friend and we backpacked around South America. And I just remember Chile being so diverse and beautiful. We started out in the Atacama Desert. I don't advise it, but I'm pretty sure we hitchhiked part of that way. And it was probably not my moment, but we started out there, and then and then you get to Santiago, and it's this just really vibrant city. And I was like, all of it surprised me. I don't know that I knew what to expect, but it was kind of like South America meets Europe. And then you go farther south to, where the mountains are in Patagonia and Punta Arenas. And our goal was to go all the way down to Tierra del Fuego and then back. And so I just had such a fun time just traveling with her and journeying. And we did a lot of, I don't know, there's a couple of times where we ended in like weird situations, but it was such a good time of me learning. And this was before we didn't have the Facebook and stuff. So I remember being on a pay phone, and it was like windy and rainy in southern Chile trying to call my mom. But it was just I don't know, I just find Chile fascinating, and it was so gorgeous and such a diverse place to go. So if you're kind of interested in seeing a lot of different typographies, it's a really fun place to be. And it's cool, like just gorgeous. And I don't know, just have like great memories.
Nice. Yeah, I've never been to anywhere in South America, so I need to get on that. But Chile sounds like a really, really good place to start. Okay, so I have two last quick questions. Now, I'm going to put these in the show notes as well. But first of all, where can people find and follow you online if anyone's interested in your programs and that kind of stuff? And is there any last message you'd like to get across before we go?
You can follow me largely online. It is my full name, Dawn Pick Benson. I know you'll put it in the show notes. It's kind of a long name but it's dawnpickbenson.com. On Instagram, that's my handle as well. You can find me Facebook there. I do have a Facebook group called Brave Journey, and it's self-discovery, solo travel for women. I have that Facebook group. So those are probably the best places to find me online. And from there, you can, search whatever else. I do have some free downloads online. There's one that follows my blueprint for solo travel. So if you want kind of a mini version of that or a place to start, that whole idea of discovering what you want to feel on your trip, like I have an exercise on there that you can do that'll help you kind of suss that out. So that might also be a good tool for people. And what would be my last words? I would just say, like, if you are in the middle of a crossroads and you feel stuck, whatever that is, your job, your life, and you're just not, like, everything just feels kind of fuzzy and you're not sure what to do next, and you have any kind of inkling that you want to travel or that travel might help you get unstuck or help you find out, like, rediscover yourself in a new way, I just say, do it. Find a way to do it. It might seem daunting at first, but you just take one step. And I've learned this throughout my life with everything, even starting my business. Just take one step. And once you do that, it's interesting how then you can see the next step. If you try to map it out all at once, it feels overwhelming and daunting. And you also might not know all the things to do, but you take one step and then it's just like as you're walking, you take a few steps and then you can see things differently. And then you take a few more and then, oh, wow, you can see that there's another street down there and I could turn right or I could turn left. So I would just suggest, like, just take a step. Just maybe tell someone you're interested in it or get online and start looking at what are the possibilities or where might you go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Take the next step because, as well, like you say, you don't know, it's too overwhelming to plan the whole thing to start with. But like you were saying, like, you might be taking steps in a completely different direction to where you thought you would be going, but it's actually a better direction, or it's like something even more exciting, and you wouldn't know unless you took that first step and that second step and all that kind of stuff. And that's definitely what's happened to me in business and travel and life and everything. Like, you end up somewhere completely different than when you thought you would end up, but it could often be even better than anything you could have planned from the get-go. So amazing. Definitely agree with that. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been really nice to meet you properly, and I've had a really, really good time with this conversation. It was really fun. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really fun talking.
Thank you for listening to the Travel Transformation Podcast with me, Jessica Grace Coleman. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could please subscribe, rate and review, and spread the word, because it's my mission to help as many people as possible to flip the script on their lives and transform through travel. And remember, life is short, so let's make sure it's nothing short of amazing. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.